In financial management as well as investing, we're trying to create value. Value in investments are where the price is lower than the fair market value of the asset. So what is the difference between price and value? Value of a financial asset is based upon the expected future cash flows. We sometimes call this the theoretical or fair market value. It's what the asset should be worth based on the fundamentals of discounting cash flows. The price is something that the seller wants to pay for it. So it is what the real market will allow based on the laws of supply and demand. There's a disconnect between value and price here, because when I walk into a retail store, I have an idea of what an item is worth. The retailer prices that item based on what everybody else thinks that that item is worth. So when there is a difference between the price and the value, which is usually the case, I can make a consumer profit as long as the value is higher than the price. So what makes the fair market value something change? Well, for a pair of socks at a retail outlet, a retail store, it's basically how bad do I need the pair of socks? In financial markets, it's based on two things: the expected cash flows that the investment will generate in the form of either dividends or capital gains, or the risks associated with those cash flows. So when the expected cash flows go up, the price or the value, fair market value goes up. When the risks go up, the fair market value goes down. So what makes the price of something change? Well, that's based on microeconomics. Same thing that makes the fair market value change, which is the aggregate demand or supply for that item. So how do we create value? In the consumer's eyes, the value is the difference between the price and the value that we see in something. In the producer's eyes, it is the difference between the sales price, or how much I can demand for that item, given the current equilibrium of supply and demand, and the cost of that item. I like the following graphic because it shows the idea of giving a gift. Now this might be different for you as it would be different for anybody, but we can see several kind of interesting ideas here being presented. We notice that the $20 gift card from Starbucks has the same value as the price. The x-axis is the value for the item, the price is the cost of the item. So if I get $20, I can use $20. $20 in lottery tickets, however, has a very low value, or at least would have a very low value in my mind. Another funny item that comes here that we can see is advice from your mother-in-law. I'm not necessarily talking about my mother-in-law here, but the price is very low, but advice, as it typically is, also has a very low value. Trust funds, automobiles, riding lawnmower, that's an interesting one. Has a relatively high price, but relatively high value. Let's look at some of those items that have a high price but low value. $500 donation in my name, a Roomba. I don't see much of a value for a roaming vacuum cleaner. However, my wife might see the value in that and might want to move it into this area here. What are some things that have a relatively high value but a low price? A remote controlled toy, lambic beer, food plan soup. These are just examples from the graphic, not necessarily what you might or I might feel. But we can see that there's some value there. Okay, let's move on. How do we measure profit? Profit measured directly is scalable. It's based on the size. And we want to be able to compare investments of different sizes. So we create what is called the percentage profit, or the rate of profit. This is the percentage increase in the value of a price of the financial asset, and it's based on the initial value, or the cost of the item. There are many other terms that are used in this, sometimes called return, percentage return, rate of return, yield, return on investment, many others. We measure the rate of profit in the following way. A lawnmower manufacturing company charges $300 for a lawnmower. It costs $270 to produce and ship the same lawnmower. So what is the return on this investment? This is going to be a reoccurring equation in this class. You will see this over and over and over again. Sometimes I call it new minus old over old. In this case, we're measuring producer profit, so we take the sales price, or the revenue generated, minus the cost of that revenue, divided by the cost. So $300 minus $270 is a $30 profit. We divide that by $270, or the initial cost, and we get an 11.11% return. Let's look at that in a little bit different way. So a year ago, you bought 100 shares of Intel stock for a total of $4,329, or $43.29 a share. Today, you sold the same 100 shares for $4,489. What was your return? Well, we want to know the percentage return here, not just the profit. So we take the new price, or the price that you're selling it for today, minus the price you paid for it, or the old price, divided by the old price. Notice the old price here is your initial investment. So if I made $160 on this investment, but I invested $4,329, $160 sounds like a good return, but it only represents a 3.7% investment. One moment here. Sorry about that. 3.7% investment. Not a great return if this is over a year's time. Now, this new minus old over old is not unique to finance. Let's say the temperature at dawn is 24 degrees, 3 p.m. it's 56 degrees. How much did the temperature change in percent? New minus old over old tells us that 56 minus 24 over 24 is 1.33. Now be careful that you don't confuse this 1.33 as 1.33%. We need to multiply that by 100%, and that tells us that there was a 133% change in the temperature. Now let's check your answer. So let's reverse that process. So 1 plus the fractional return times the initial value will give us the final value. So 24 degrees times 2.33 tells us that it would be 56 degrees, given a 133% change. Note that the equation to find the value of some constant increase by some percent is new equals old times 1 plus the percentage change. Second example. At the beginning of 2005, the population of Albuquerque, New Mexico was 450,000. At the end of 2005, the population was 461,200. What was the percentage change? Once again, new minus old. New 461,000 minus 450,000 over the initial value tells us that the population changed 2.489%. So we see here that it's reported as a fraction, here as a percentage. I don't care which way that you present it, as long as you include the percentage sign if you are presenting the value as a percentage. So, wrapping up. In finance, we're more concerned with the rate of return than we are with the profit, because we want to compare. Comparing is important because many different investments have different size different values. For example, assume that we invested $5,000 now, we received $5,500 in 1 year, or we invested $100,000 now, received $108,000 in 1 year. Well, based on profit, we're making $8,000 on the second investment where the first investment only made $500. Based on rate of return or return on our investment, new minus old over old, we're making a 10% return on investment A, where we're only making an 8% return on investment B. So the assumption is if I could invest in A 20 times, I would make a 10% return on my investment or a $10,000 profit, where investment B would only make an 8% or an $8,000 profit. So the main point here, option B has a higher total dollar profit, but option A was actually more profitable. It produced more money with respect to the amount invested. In other words, a higher proportion of option A's investment was returned as profit. Investments expressed as rates of return can be compared